So in Unit 2, Module 2, we're going to talk more about discovery. Discovery fundamentally is about what problem are you trying to solve. So there's two aspects of that. There's firstly the why. Can we actually deliver value to our organization by solving this problem? Can we deliver value to users and customers by solving this problem? And secondly, there's the what and the how. What problem are we going to actually solve for our users? How are we going to solve that problem? How will we measure success? And discovery is something that we will always do when we're coming up with a new idea for a product. But it's also something we'll do throughout the product lifecycle. If we discover one of our major assumptions is invalid, which will mean we need to pivot our product. If we're building major new features, anytime we need to do something that we think is risky, we're going to have to do discovery to test our assumptions and our risks. So when you do a discovery activity, fundamentally what we're trying to do is this. First of all, validate the problem that we're trying to solve, that it's a real problem and that it's one that will deliver value. Or not validate it. And that is just as useful and much more common. Whenever we're doing discovery, we're innovating, we're doing something that hasn't been done before, and that's very likely to fail. We're likely to be wrong. And it's crucially important. I cannot overstate the importance of not doing things that are bad ideas. It's super valuable to find out really early on that your idea is not actually going to work, so that you can avoid doing all the work and effort that you would do by proceeding on the assumption that it is going to work. The chances are strongly against you. Only a fool would spend months or years pursuing an idea that they hadn't first validated. And when you validate it, chances are the more innovative your idea is, the more likely you are to be wrong in terms of your first go at solving that problem. So if you can show that that problem is not actually a real problem and then change tack and try and solve a real problem, that's a great outcome. We're going to secondly identify personas. What kinds of people are the customers or the users for our products? Third, we're going to think about risks. What are the major risks? And then go through that process of doing risk discovery that we talked about in Unit 1. Fourth, and critically, we're going to identify the key assumptions that we're making when we're thinking about our risks and validating our product. And then we're going to design experiments to test those risks. Finally, we'll define what success looks like for our product in the next month and in the next year, or horizons that are similar to that. That might not be the exact one to go for, but those are ones to start thinking about so that you've got a clear short-term horizon and also a clear long-term horizon, where we're going to be much less precise about what those goals look like, but we're going to think about what would it take for us to say in a year's time that we'd spent our time wisely and we were on the right track. So in order to achieve these outcomes, we'll typically do some kind of workshop. What does a workshop look like? It's going to be a 1 to 4 week collaborative activity. Lots of people skip this. It's a terrible idea. Very important to perform a discovery workshop and carve out time to do it. Now, if you're really pressed for time and your problem is reasonably well validated, you can get it down to a couple of days, but it's very risky to do that unless you've got an extremely experienced team and a well validated problem. If that's not the case, you want to be thinking about 1 to 4 weeks. Who will be involved in that workshop? It should be the product owner, the key stakeholders, and a cross-functional team of people who are going to be involved in building and delivering that. So you want people from product, people from support, UX, of course, and anyone who can give you information on the key risks and who are the key stakeholders. But not more than about 10 people. Once you go much above 10 people, it's too many people and you can't get anything done. And this is going to be a full day, multi-day activity. It's not something that people are going to be able to do part-time. So you have to make sure people have carved out full time, full days to work together on this activity and not do anything else. We're going to apply what we call design thinking methods. And design thinking is not something I'm going to go into a lot of detail about in this course, but I'll sketch out some key elements of design thinking in as much as they're important to this class. We're going to produce a lot of documents when we do a discovery workshop and in this class, but the documents are not the point. This is really crucial. A lot of people think that the artifacts that you produce as a product owner or a product manager and the artifacts you produce when you're doing these workshops are the point. They are not. The point is the shared understanding that you gain as a team in the process of creating the artifacts. And the artifacts are a useful reminder after the fact, but the artifacts are not the point. They're a means to an end or a byproduct of achieving that shared understanding. And at the end of a discovery workshop, we have to make sure that we validated the opportunity or indeed not validated it and moved on to something else. What do I mean by shared understanding? Unfortunately, it's very common for people to think they all have the same idea about what's going on, but that's not actually true. So a lot of exercise that you'll find in these kinds of workshops are focused on getting everybody's ideas out in a way where we can all understand them and talk about them so that we can evolve them, and in the process of doing so create a shared understanding and make sure we really do have agreement. Unfortunately, the human mind is very complex and we all have very different shared assumptions, and communication and the language we use is often quite limited as a way of making sure that we have the same idea in our head. So these shared collaborative activities that we'll do are a great way of making sure that we do actually have the same ideas. And it's very common on teams to think you're all on the same page when you're actually not. So these activities are really important. So I mentioned design thinking. One idea in design thinking is this concept of divergent and convergent thinking and exploration. So lots of activities use this model in order to explore a particular topic or a particular subject. And this is something that you'll do fractally. Your whole product, in a sense, is an exploration. So an exploration activity can take months or even years, but at a micro level, we can perform exploration activities in a few minutes or tens of minutes. And that's typically what we'll be doing in a discovery workshop. And these kinds of exploration ideas have an opening phase where we're coming up with a bunch of ideas and we're not judging them. We're just trying to come up with as many ideas as we can without any judgment. This is called divergent thinking. And then we examine all those ideas, and then we do what's called evaluative or convergent thinking, and we choose which ideas are good ideas and then close by picking one or two or a small number of those ideas. So this kind of activity is very important because it's a way of getting everybody's ideas into the open and then discussing them and then evaluating them. So this process is crucial to discovery and to creating a shared understanding. And what you'll find is that some people are better at one of these activities and worse at the other activity. You will find people on your team who are great at divergent thinking. They're always coming up with new ideas. And if you're like me, I'm very evaluative. I'm just kind of putting my head in my hands and being like, I'm so happy that you've got all these great ideas, but let's focus on the task at hand. Now, that's not always the right thing to do. You do need divergent thinking. It's very important. One of the points of having a team and having a diverse team with lots of different backgrounds and ideas is that you will find lots of different ways to think about the problem and how to solve the problem. So you've got to use that. And so divergent thinking is crucial in order to actually come up with a lot of ideas and really harness the creativity and power of your team. But you also have to have convergent thinking. And if you're the kind of person who's always sparking with new ideas, it's really important also to be able to get into that mode where you say, okay, this is great, but we have to now focus on something. So both of these kinds of thinking are necessary, and some people are better than one than at the other, and that's okay. We're going to use both of those kinds of thinking, and we're going to use them both at different times. So what you'll see is a pattern that we use throughout these collaborative exercises, where we start with generative or divergent thinking, and then we end with convergent or evaluative thinking. And we start that kind of exercise firstly with individual brainstorming, and what we'll typically do is get a whole bunch of sticky notes and get everybody to write down their ideas about a particular topic on sticky notes. And there's tools like stickies.io that you can use to do this remote with the team as well. But the crucial thing is that we start with individual brainstorming. So that's a silent activity where you have a problem in front of you and you have to think about that problem and your ideas about it, and you'll write a bunch of different sticky notes, one sticky note per idea. The reason we do that silently and individually is because if you skip to group discussion, what you'll find is that a lot of people in your group don't like to speak up. And I'm sure you've seen this before. If you're in a team, you ask people for feedback, it's the same people who are always sticking their hands up, and it's the same people who don't say anything. And that's more about power dynamics than it is about who has good ideas. And it's really important, if you're going to actually have an effective high-performing team, that you use a technique that harnesses the innovation and ideas of people who are not necessarily comfortable speaking out and being the people to raise their hands. So we're going to decouple those two things, the power dynamics of who feels comfortable speaking up and the ability to get good ideas from a diverse range of viewpoints, by always starting with individual brainstorming, where individuals write down their ideas on sticky notes silently for 5 to 10 minutes. Give people more time than is comfortable. It's better to have time where you're silent and just kind of thinking than it is to cut people off before they've had a chance to really think the problem through. So individual brainstorming, we'll come up with a bunch of sticky notes, and we'll either put those on a whiteboard or a shared wall that we can stick stickies on, or we'll use a virtual tool that lets you do the same thing, where you can get all the stickies in one place. And only then, once we've done the individual brainstorming, will we then go and discuss the stickies. And we'll typically give the people who wrote the stickies 10 seconds or 20 seconds to just briefly present what's on that sticky note and go through all of them. And then people can ask clarifying questions if they don't understand. So that is the generative or divergent stage of the activity. Then we'll do the convergent stage. We'll prioritize, and a great way to do that is what's called dot voting. In dot voting, you have a certain number of votes, say 5 votes, and you vote by putting a dot on the sticky that you want to talk more about, and then you go through the stickies in order based on the number of dots on that sticky. And you can also consolidate stickies. So if you've written the same, or 2 different people or more have written the same thing, you can stick them onto that sticky note. So we'll prioritize in this way, and then we'll have a group discussion in order until we run out of time. And then we'll make sure we've identified action items and next steps so that we know what we're doing before the next activity. So that's how you do group activities like that. We did one of these already in the week 1 class. We'll do these throughout this class, but that's just a picture of how you do collaborative exercises in a design thinking way that makes use of both of those domains of convergence and divergence, and that makes sure that you harness the innovation and ingenuity of your team.